Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. Dai here. Today I'm gonna do something a bit unconventional for the channel, that being versus battle style speculation. Asking questions like, who is the strongest, or who would win in a fight between fictional characters can certainly be fun, but it's far from an exact science. A good fight is always built upon a foundation of narrative drama, featuring characters with both strengths and weaknesses. For example, Shiro vs. Gilgamesh is an awesome fight because, under most logic and circumstance, Gilgamesh could easily wipe the floor with Shiro, and yet he loses because of his own hubris. It's clear that if he whipped out Ea from the start and didn't hold back, Shiro would have been toast. Therefore, arguing that Gilgamesh is one of the strongest servants doesn't really accomplish much to me. There are situations in which he would lose, and his potential power has nothing to do with it. My point being, this kind of thing gets semantic real quick, but I do see merit in it as an opportunity to talk about characters and their varied abilities. Thus, for today, I want to analyze and debate which mages in the Nasuverse are the strongest. I've taken suggestions from my Discord and looked up a few online threads for various nominations. Some of them I was able to dismiss right away, but others will prove to be solid contenders. The biggest caveat to this endeavor comes when we ask, what constitutes the strongest or most powerful mage? Is it the strength of their magic circuits, the lineage of their crest, their capacity for channeling mana, or their political standing in the Mages Association? These things may prove important, but what I'm mainly looking at is a mage's ability to affect the surrounding world, specifically in a combat scenario. As long as that ability stems from magecraft, and they've acquired it through their own merits as a mage, then it's fair game for discussion. It's worth noting a mage's potential versus their actual practical use of said skills, as fighting to the death or being overly ambitious may not be in a mage's interest or nature. Perhaps the strongest mage is a pacifist who never fights, but could dominate in any battle they actually tried in. Let's start with a baseline, someone we can compare other mages to as we go forward. Rin Tosaka is awesome, so let's start with her. Rin is, by most all standards, a brilliant mage. She was born with exceptional magic circuits and an unusually high capacity for mana generation. You know, her internal capacity, or ode. Rin's mother, Aoi, was chosen specifically because of her family's history of birthing talented children. Recall that, in Unlimited Blade Works, it's Rin's mana that powers Shiro's noble phantasm. Even if she were nothing more than a mana battery, she'd make a hella good one. She has an affinity for all 5 great elements, which means her spells have a variety of practical applications. Sure, she has her Gundo shots, which instill curses on her opponents, as well as a myriad of other well-rounded techniques, but none of these are her greatest asset. Rather, the bulk of her offensive magecraft comes from transferring power, in this case storing her mana into various gems to activate later like magical grenades. This has 2 major benefits. For one, it lets her cast powerful spells quickly without the need for a long incantation. In addition, these spells exceed the amount of mana Rin could normally output in a single day. A single gem could contain excess mana she's accumulated over 17 years of living. While this sets her apart from the majority of modern mages, in terms of raw power, her gems are only able to counter spells that Medea, a mage from the Age of Gods, can whip out on the fly. Rin nearly beats Medea by supplementing her gems with magically enhanced martial arts, but one could easily argue this only worked as a surprise attack. That said, a win is a win, meaning that Rin and Medea could be considered on par with one another. Oh, and considering that Rin and Luvia are rivals who constantly fight each other to a draw, I think both of them are on equal standing. As for Sakura, she also has amazing talent as a mage, but no formal training. Most of her strength is given to her by Angra Mainyu and her link to the Grail. Therefore, I wouldn't put her on this list personally. I'd love to see what she can do with some more training though. In general, magecraft was way stronger during the Age of Gods. Mana was more plentiful, and with mystery being commonplace in the world, mages had access to more mana, and in turn, more powerful spells. Medea is a prime example. She casts spells that can no longer be used in the modern era, channeling mana through high-speed divine words that humans can no longer pronounce. This lets her cast spells almost instantly. She has a variety of spells, mainly witchcraft specializing in curses and manipulating her victims like playthings. Offensively speaking, she uses Rain of Light, or Makia Hecatic Grea, beams of light with rank A attack power. Rin's spells can match rank A, but only while she has gems at her disposal. Medea doesn't have that limitation, so in terms of raw spellcasting, she is indeed superior, considered one of the 5 strongest mages to ever exist. We'll be the judge of that, though. If we're going to mention Medea, we also have to discuss her mentor, Circe. In terms of magecraft, Circe is on par with Medea, also using the Rain of Light. She tends not to be as offensive in general, instead preferring to turn her enemies into piglets. On the other hand, she can control the mysterious Scylla as a familiar, but that seems to be more of a talent inherited by her servant form than something she could actually do during her lifetime. Otherwise, Odysseus wouldn't have had to suffer through Scylla's wrath in the Odyssey. As to whether Circe is stronger than or equal to Medea depends on circumstance. What some fans have brought up is that both Circe and Medea use magecraft taught to them by the goddess Hecate. This could imply that Hecate is stronger than both of them, though I can't say that for sure without seeing her in action. A video like this wouldn't be complete without at least mentioning Samiramis. She's both an assassin and a caster, but what I'm looking for is her skill in magecraft as a human, not a servant. While she claims to have only dabbled in magecraft during her lifetime, she's clearly selling herself short. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon weren't actually something she made in life, so it and all its magical armaments don't really count here. Beyond that, though, she's still one beast of a mage, summoning phantasmal species she witnessed in the Age of Gods. I don't feel she's the strongest, but she's definitely worth a mention. For a moment, let's return to the Age of Man. A lot of fans love to speculate how powerful Shiro Emiya could be under the right conditions. After all, his Fate Stay Night version was taught magecraft incorrectly, without Kiritsugu's magic crest. To be fair, Kiritsugu didn't even get much of his crest from his father. If we look at his Nasuverse version, on the other hand, we experience a much more talented warrior. In terms of bloodline, Shiro has really low mana capacity and underdeveloped circuits. He makes up for this, though, with his Origin of Sword, which lets him use a special version of projection called tracing. After understanding a sword's inner structure, he can project it out of thin air to use in battle. At its peak, this is used en masse through his Reality Marble, Unlimited Blade Works, granting him access to thousands of swords which he can fire off like bullets. For protection, he's also got Ro Ias, which is capable of nearly tanking noble phantasms like Gay Bolg and Excalibur. By whipping out the right sword against the right opponent, Shiro can take advantage of pretty much anyone's weakness, just like Gilgamesh. It's worth noting that Unlimited Blade Works isn't technically Shiro's own power as a mage, though. Without becoming Heroic Spirit Emiya, and retroactively meeting his servant incarnation, Shiro wouldn't have been able to channel it at all. In the Nasuverse, Shiro can only use the Blade Works after using the Archer class card to solo a Grail War. In Stay Night, Shiro can only use the Blade Works after fighting Archer and forming a mental link with him. In Heaven's Feel, Shiro needs to use Archer's arm to pull off any of his insane projections, and doing so basically kills him. We can only imagine how strong other mages would be given this opportunity. Imagine if Rin became a heroic spirit, gaining a noble phantasm of her own in the process. If she were to meet her human self, she could teach herself that noble phantasm, which is just insane. I only bring this up because Shiro can't use Unlimited Blade Works freely. Either he needs someone else's mana to pull it off, or he sacrifices his body in exchange for that power. Assuming either of these conditions are met, then we can probably assume a lot about his strength, at least temporarily. Shiro is able to defeat Gilgamesh, that is, if Gilgamesh doesn't spam Enuma Elish. To be fair, I don't know many mages that could actually stand up to Ea, so it's not that much of a criticism. Under the right conditions, I could certainly see Shiro defeating Rin, Medea, and Circe, though I could also see him losing those fights just as easily. How does he compare to his father, Kiritsugu? Kiritsugu, as we see him in Fate Zero, is a reasonably talented mage who derives strength from embracing human technology that other mages are too prideful to use. His ability to use guns doesn't make him a better mage, but his origin bullets certainly count as an application of magecraft. If Kiritsugu shoots a fellow mage with his origin bullet while their magic circuits are open, the bullet will sever those circuits and rebind them incorrectly. As we've seen with Kayneth, this can permanently cripple a mage's abilities. That is one hell of an ability he can use as a surprise attack or as a deterrent. A mage won't dare to channel any strong spells if they know about the bullet's nature. They'd have to be quicker than a bullet even. They may not fall for it as a trick, but they can't very well leave themselves vulnerable either. On top of that, Kiritsugu can manipulate time, for himself anyway. In a feat almost akin to true magic, he can accelerate his body's internal sense of time to outmaneuver his enemies. He can also decelerate his body to the point where his heartbeat can't be detected. Using it takes a huge toll on him, so it's not something he can constantly rely on. That said, it does allow him to outmaneuver Kirei Kotomine, so if I had to choose between those two rivals, I'd say Kiritsugu is the stronger mage. It's a close call though. Where does that leave all the more conventional modern mages though? All things considered, someone like Kayneth is considered exceptionally strong, but origin bullets were so dangerous they'd render that strength practically worthless. I'd argue any mage who can't outmaneuver Kiritsugu's bullets would be unable to kill him. But if they can enhance their own bodies like Kirei and Rin, however, they stand a chance of victory, either by forcing Kiritsugu to waste his supply of origin bullets, or to force him to realize he shouldn't even bother. This creates a gray area for many modern mages that could otherwise dominate the competition. The following will be some mages that could potentially defeat Kiritsugu if they could overcome origin bullets and their limited supply. Despite what some people have said to me, I still consider Ciel a mage. After all, she was chosen as a vessel for Michael Roa Valdemjong due to her splendid magic circuits. Ciel doesn't traditionally practice magecraft, but her exploits through the church still count, either from the manifestation of black keys, exorcism rites, or the mystic codes she borrows from the Atlas Institute. The reason she ranks high on this list is because of her immortality. So long as Roa continues to reincarnate, Ciel cannot be killed by anything outside of the mystic eyes of death perception. Since no other mages happen to have those eyes, she has an overwhelming advantage. The Tsukihime remake makes her even more OP in how she can appropriate the idea bloods of dead apostles she slays as unique spells. In particular, she uses her attack, Kulvaria Galgalim, to crush and kinda sorta kill Arcuade, which is something other mages simply can't brag about. A lesser-known mage is Bartholomew Lorelei, the Clock Tower's vice director and lord of the policies department. She fights dead apostles for the fun of it, and can take on dead apostle ancestors one-on-one. This is mostly thanks to her amazing magic circuits, called Blue Blood. She's got a ridiculous amount of quality circuits that have allowed her to become known as the Queen, the supreme mage of the present era. While I don't think that makes her the strongest mage alive today, it does make her one of the most powerful mages to emerge in recent years. Other mages wind up living for hundreds upon thousands of years to reach her level of strength. This can be said for the Atlas alchemist Zepia Eltnam Atlasia. His specialty as a mage is memory partition, the ability to separate his mind into multiple independent trains of thought. He uses this to predict the end of the world, which is something all Atlas alchemists do. Zepia has been doing this since the year 1400 AD, as the active director of Atlas. In Tsukihime worlds, he goes on to be the dead apostle ancestor Tatari, or the Knight of Wallachia. Sticking strictly to his strength as a mage, however, it can be hard to evaluate his combat potential, unless we want to give him credit for all of Atlas's superweapons, which are deadly enough to end the world despite being made in order to prevent that. I feel one could definitely make an argument in his favor. Similarly, Soren Araya is a mage who's lived for about 300 years, searching for the root to give meaning to people's otherwise pointless deaths. He transfers his soul to different bodies, and does so more successfully than someone like Zoken ever could, considering these new bodies are strong enough to punch through concrete and dodge bullets. He can see the origin of other mages, and even awaken them to it. For some, this can be an absolute nightmare. He remains stubbornly alive due to his origin of stillness. This is further enhanced by having the Sarira, or sacred remains of Buddha, embedded in his left arm. As if that weren't OP enough, he protects himself with a threefold barrier, a bounded field called Rokudo Kyokai. It's not just a barrier either, it has 6 functions of attack as well. The dude's so strong he's been able to kill one of the universe's best mages, Toko Aozaki. Like Rin, Toko was born as an exceptional mage. Due to both her superior genetics and work ethic, she was in line to inherit the Aozaki clan's treasured 5th magic. When this decision was revoked, however, Toko fled the family and studied at the Clock Tower, becoming the 2nd youngest mage in the association to reach the highest rank of Grand. Rather than excelling at any one aspect of magecraft, she is a jack of all trades. She has deadly familiars such as Lug Beowulf, a projection machine that creates a phantom cat, as well as a sealed box containing a horrific demon preserved from the Age of Gods. Toko also uses runes, many of which were lost to time, yet she reconstructed them. Her specialty comes from creating puppets, lifelike humanoids that she can directly control, as opposed to automata which control themselves. Most impressive are the puppets she makes of her own body. In the event of her main body's death, she can carry on living through her puppet, which is indistinguishable from the real thing. Toko was born with mystic eyes of enchantment, and she went on to enhance them further by creating a set of eyes within her eyes. These eyes reflect off of each other like mirrors, giving them unlimited use in binding her enemies. Because her sister Aoko was chosen to inherit the family crest, Toko compensates by using the magic crests of other mages. By kidnapping mages, she can borrow and use their magic crests without causing pain to herself. Despite all of this natural talent, Toko proves unable to defeat her sister, proving just how powerful true magic can be. By the time Toko was already excelling at the Clock Tower, Aoko was just learning the basics of magecraft from her friend Alice Kuonji. As the late inheritor of Magic Blue, the 5th magic, she lacks superior mage genetics and a formal knowledge of the craft. Mind you, this is only in comparison to Toko, as Aoko eventually learns to use her circuits quickly and efficiently. Her circuits are fewer in number and considered weak, but they have the unique ability of rotation, spinning so fast they emit sound. Think of it like a car with a small gas tank that gets incredible mileage. The rotational speed of her circuits makes up for any formal deficiency, allowing her to fight even servants. This lends itself to her as a rapid-fire mage, capable of launching powerful spells in short bursts. Onlookers describe her as a mage with a knack for destruction, one who excels at the expense of causing collateral damage. This makes Narrow Chaos, the guy who literally absorbs other living things into his body, say, "Fuck that shit. I won't absorb a chick like that." Aoko combines physical attacks with her spells, similar to Rin and Luvia. Aoko's destructive capacity is something she developed over time. As a high school student, she would have been too inexperienced to beat her sister. Thankfully, the 5th magic compensates for that. Magic Blue is definitely the most complicated magic we actually get to experience. Put bluntly, it allows Aoko to manipulate time in her own universe. During their fight, Toko kills Aoko's companion, Sojiro Shizuki, and nearly wins. Upon activating Magic Blue, however, Aoko accomplishes 2 amazing, miraculous feats. One, she is able to avert Sojiro's death by taking those 5 minutes and placing them far into the future. She then borrows 10 years of Sojiro's internal time and uses them to manifest herself 10 years in the future. In effect, Aoko temporarily manifests as her more experienced future self. This version of herself overpowers all of Toko's runes and thwarts all of Toko's offensive efforts. Time eventually returns to normal, but with Sojiro's death stored away in the far future, it puts a tremendous burden on the universe that, in billions of years, will result in a heat death of the universe. As strong as Aoko is, she's still looking for a solution to this problem. What this means in terms of combat is that she could, in theory, render anything you do to her ineffective by placing that span of time somewhere else on the timeline. She can access versions of herself from the future, not only as a means of strengthening herself with future experience, but also as a means of countering each and every attack you send her way. She could do this with such reckless abandon that the entire universe suffers for it. So long as dodging bullets remains possible, Kiritsugu and even Shiro would be toast. Following with how broken true magic is, we of course have to mention Zelrech. We don't know exactly how this guy got his hands on the second magic, but we do know what it can pull off. Kaleidoscope allows Zelrech to explore and manipulate parallel worlds. He's had this ability since at least the year 300 AD, when he defeated Brunstud of the Crimson Moon, a friggin' ultimate one. He did this with his jeweled sword, a weapon that draws in mana from other worlds, giving him a nearly limitless supply of energy. Either by becoming a dead apostle, or through other means, he's been able to survive all this time without the setbacks incurred by other immortals, like Zokin or Michael Roa Valdemyong. That said, beating the Crimson Moon did exhaust much of his actual body's potential, and he apparently can't exert that level of force ever again. We haven't exactly seen him fight since then either. Instead, he observes parallel worlds, and advises the mages in them to take action. Even so, I can totally imagine a fight between Zelrech and Aoko being insanely brutal. Theoretically, Zelrech can fire off an infinite supply of infinitely strong blasts of mana, whereas Aoko can anticipate and evade those blasts, even subverting any damage she takes by moving it somewhere in the future. As Zelrech depletes other worlds of their mana, Aoko burdens her own world to an inevitable destruction, all to settle some kind of bet or grudge. Let's just say there's a reason why the counterforce exists, and why very few mages have actually reached the root. There are a handful of more obscure mages I'd like to mention before going even further. One is Callback Alcatraz, a mage who never makes an in-person appearance. He's one of Zelrech's buddies, who made himself a dead apostle through magecraft. Presumably, he's been trapped in a labyrinth of his own creation, one that most mages dare not enter. It's quite impressive, filled with monsters and traps that protect his ideal terminal, the Holy Scripture Triton. But exactly what Triton can do, and what Callback would look like using it, remain a total mystery. Kirstaria Wodim is also a brilliant mage, who would be even stronger if he hadn't been permanently weakened during an assassination attempt on his life. He got injured by a weapon somewhat similar to the Origin Bullet, but obviously nowhere nearly as effective. Kirstaria then studied astromancy under the guidance of Marisbury Animesphere. The Chaldeans were an ancient group of mages during the Age of Gods who developed their craft around the positioning of the stars and solar system. Even though Kirstaria mastered this craft, perhaps even exceeding Marisbury directly, that knowledge didn't make him especially powerful. His spells could only be used during the Age of Gods, and without the Lost Belts or Ray Shift technology, he couldn't use their full strength. In the right environment, however, he can use his spells to align the cosmos itself into a massive magic circle capable of raining down meteorites from above. He is described as one of the strongest mages alive in this state, given that he was able to defeat Zeus in a one-on-one duel. I'd love to see Zelrech or Aoko try and fight a god like that. Another serious contender for strongest mage has gotta be Darius Ainsworth. In some ways, Darius is similar to Shiro, in that he's taken a fairly basic form of magecraft and evolved it into a deadly fighting force. He uses Flash Air, a stronger variant of displacement magecraft, that lets him essentially transform things. It's based in alchemy, and while this craft is often seen as an inefficient novelty, Darius has used it to much greater effect, all because of his partnership with Pandora. That's right, the Pandora from the Greek myth surrounding Pandora's box. Darius resides in the Mewverse of Prisma Ilia, a world that is dying due to mana depletion. His true purpose behind the Holy Grail Wars of his world is to generate an entirely new world from within Pandora's box, a world that not even the Roots Akashic records can account for. Darius uses his Flash Air to create the class cards, drawing heroic spirits from the Throne of Heroes, and passing them through Pandora's box to extract their abilities and store them within cards. Drawing from Pandora's box, he can whip out noble phantasms that technically don't exist yet. Like many of the other mages discussed thus far, he preserves his life for hundreds of years. In his case, he reincarnates within his descendants, almost like when Roa picks new vessels. To top it all off, Darius bolsters his strength by weaving his own legend over the years. Just as heroic spirits derive power from their legends, Darius inscribes the story he wishes to play out onto stone slabs. When history follows this narrative, it just makes him stronger. Later in his life, he even finds his magic circuits ruined by an origin bullet, but he overcomes this by existing through magical thorns generated from his main body. So here's a guy who can technically tank an origin bullet. Damn. So far, the strongest mages I've mentioned seem to rely on the power of true magic or some other divine entity. Manaka Sajo is an exception. Much like Ryogi Shiki, Manaka was born with a direct connection to the root of all existence. This means she can tap into the foundation of existence itself, at least as much as her magic circuits will let her. As such, while her father hopes to reach the root through a Holy Grail war, Monica has no need for it. Instead, this wicked child seeks the Grail to give rise to the Beast class of servants, partnering with the Beast of 666 from the Bible. Shiki by herself is already someone I'd consider to be one of the strongest beings in the entire Nasuverse, and she wasn't even a mage. Monica's connection to the root has helped her learn every magecraft in the entire world, with more talent than mages from the Age of Gods. She's more powerful than her own damn servant, and she wants to grant King Arthur's wish for an eternal Britain. With enough mana, she can actually make it happen. Even after being cast into the Grail, she lives on with an obsession for Arthur. I don't think even true magic can stand up to the root directly, so she's easily a top contender. As to how she'd actually look like in battle, that's tricky. Now, if there's any room to argue for a mage stronger than those who already have true magic, or those who are directly connected to the root, I feel we need to look at some iconic mages from the Age of Gods. First up would be Merlin and Morgan Le Fay, mages who existed on the tail end of the age, living alongside fairies, the last phantasmal species to hightail it to the reverse side of the world. Merlin is, of course, a candidate for Grand Caster, a select servant elite meant to defeat the very beasts a mage like Monica seeks out. We see this strength in action when he turns Tiamat's Chaos Tide into beautiful flowers. He's not without strength, but most of his abilities do seem to be supplemental. He's fantastic for defense, even being able to protect someone from afar while his body rests in Avalon. He's great at arranging things like Artorias' conceptual conception, allowing Lady Igraine to be impregnated with the essence of the Red Dragon. He's got profound clairvoyance, though that doesn't seem to stop him from getting into trouble, like pissing off Vivian and getting stuck in Avalon. As an incubus, he can feed on and toy with the dreams of people while they're sleeping. In all these ways, he makes for great support, manipulating things in his favor, but he's not the most immediately powerful. If it was his attack against someone else's, he'd probably lose, but he is a mage who's clever enough not to let things escalate that far. Other powerful mages, such as Francesca Prelati, are descendants of Merlin's pupils, so I'm inclined to believe that Merlin is stronger than them. Again, can't be too sure though. Morgan is occasionally thought of as Merlin's equal, though her exploits are less renowned. Despite a career of trying to thwart her sister Artoria, Morgan was never truly able to dismantle Arthur's rule on her own. She operated through witchcraft and scheming from the shadows. That said, the Morgan we encounter in Lost Belt 6 is quite different. This Morgan has found a way of using Rongominiad as a form of magecraft, wielding a devastating might that eclipses Kirstaria's strongest attacks. It is said that while the alien god is looking for a suitable vessel, Lost Belt Morgan is the strongest being on the planet. Another component of her magecraft is her Infinity Mirror, or Grand Thaumaturgy of opposing mirrors. By accumulating enough mana over time, she can invoke a bolt of lightning that sends its target back in time. This is on par with true magic, yet she hasn't actually reached the root. Personally, I'd advocate that Lost Belt Morgan is actually stronger than Merlin, from a destructive standpoint anyway. The last mage I want to address is King Solomon, known as the King of Magecraft. He helped shape the foundation of magecraft, but does that make him superior to all that came after him? Hard to say. His greatest asset is the true wisdom he obtained from God, the 10 rings that allow him to conjure angels and demons. He employed 72 demon god familiars, and enacted a miracle that allowed ordinary humans to harness magecraft. We've seen how powerful these demon gods are, requiring people like Merlin just to help in the fight. The fact that Solomon, while he was still alive, could control these demons, means that technically his power exceeds theirs. Counting his form as a grand servant isn't exactly fair, but even with the achievements he accomplished as a human, he likely surpasses Merlin. As to whether Morgan's Rongominiad could wipe out all the demon gods, and then some, however, is up to speculation. So, what do we make of all of this? Personally, I'd like to advocate that Zelrech, at his full strength, could likely outperform the other mages in the Nasuverse with his jeweled sword. That's the beauty of it, though. Zelrech is said to be weaker after slaying the Crimson Moon, so it's hard to say just how much of that otherwise infinite mana he can even use now. Aoko's true magic is no doubt formidable, but it doesn't seem like something she can consistently use without major drawbacks. Monika is also extremely deadly, but she was defeated by her own servant at one point, so it could be just a matter of getting the right hit in at the right time. It's safe to assume that Solomon, the guy who essentially created Magecraft, would be capable of using its strongest spells. And perhaps one of those spells is stronger than a given blast of Morgan's Rongominiad, which is an anti-planet attack. Honestly, they could all prevail under the right scenario, and it's up to talented writers to construct those circumstances. Is there a definite, strongest mage in the verse? Until Nasu blatantly declares one, I don't think so. Instead, there are some prime candidates we could debate eternally over. In that case, let's do just that. Go ahead and take to the comment section to elaborate on who you think is the strongest mage. Under what conditions would they finally be able to triumph over all the others? Before I go ahead and roll the credits, I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters. Video Gamer 75, C. James Torley, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Freebrick, Cosmonaut, RNG or Shuffles 1498, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Johnny Tsunami, Link Pendrago, Caitlin P., Vladimir Rovna, Succubus Sakura, and SF Giants fan Mike. Thank you all so much. Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
celebrate your fandom!